day and welcome back to my channel. So we have gotten the base put together, as you can see, and I have sort of done up the details around where it needed to be filled, and that was a project. And we'll kind of touch base on what I did, how I did it, and the whys of what I did. But this was I'm still not entirely happy with it, but it'll work, right? I mean, I've still got the ability to go back and finish up a few places, and well, let's sort of talk about what I did. So start with what the instruction book tells you to do, right? So let's slide over to here. So it tells you to trim the edges down and then put trim so the base, remember, was folded like this, came up, and then here was the base where this part is, right? So the part that flanges out, right, that's the part it's telling you to trim off. And then, you can see that there. And then it tells you to clip it together, glue it, and put filler in there. So what I did do is I did not trim it the way they tell you to, is I trimmed it all the way down. And I put it on a bit of foam board. And what that meant I had to do was I had to cut these off, right? So this is how I trimmed it off. And then I also had to trim off all of these little extra stands that are designed so that when you put the pieces on, or when you put like the piece of Moonbase Alpha, they've got something to push against so you can actually glue them down. So I have a whole bunch of, this is what I trimmed off. So there's a whole bunch of those. So what that did is that made this less flimsy, right? So as I'm working on basing this material, or basing the surface of the moon for the moon base, the overall base itself was more firm. It wasn't as flimsy, which meant I could deal with it better. The flip side to it, though, is the foam core curls up a little bit the way it's glued, so I may have to put another layer of foam core and glue it down. And there's also these areas where the hills are around the edges, right? So what's here is actually a bit of epoxy clay. It's actually called Freeform Air, and I got it from Smooth On, and it's a 2-part clay that is very, very light. It also forms up very easily. You just mush it together. It mixes 1 to 1, and you just mush it together, and then you can stick it in under here, and it cures up hard. So that's what I did there. And I was going to try to do it in these spaces, but the thing with that stuff is it doesn't really stick well to anything except your hands or your gloves, where I have found that it's actually a real pain to get to use like I would use green stuff. I really wish it would stick better, but I haven't figured out the secret on how to get that to do that. So that one is sort of, that's not what I did. What I did do is I used tile grout. So all I did was, and this stuff is pretty easy to use. All I did was I used this, scooped a bit of it with a cocktail stick or whatever, tongue depressor, and filled in the gaps. And you can kind of see here, right, in that space there where I had done some of that work. Now, I intentionally did that so that I could show you that I did this, right? So, and if you look here, if you look for it, you can see it. And I'll tell you some of the things that I did here to help blend that into the surface. But for the most part, the seam fades away with the work that I did. Now here, you've got one of the travel tubes comes along here and goes across there. There's a little bit here that still bothers me, but I think it'll fade away with the paint with that one, it pretty much hides fairly well, except for right up there at the edge, which I'm not too terribly worried about. If I need to, I can put some more in. Down here, I pretty much lose most of it as well. So the seam gets hidden fairly well using this. So that's what I used to fill these seams. And you can see this is what the seams look like. That's how, excuse me, that's just how terrible they are. They're really, really rough and really bad. But you know, it's part of the way this is. And that's actually that actually is why I never did get this built when I was a kid. I did not have the skill set or the tools or anything on how to do that. So that was where I failed. So as of now, I've gotten further than I did the first time I tried this. So, you know, yay, getting older or wiser or whatever. So then what did I do? You can tell this has a texture to it. And now here are places that I found that I had actually missed when I was texturing this. And honestly, this was really, really simple. Anybody who does gaming terrain or miniature trains terrain has done this. And this is just, it's not flocking, but it's putting basing material on. All this is, I've got PVA glue, which is 1-to-1 with water, and this is heavy PVA glue. This is the really strong stuff. Now this stuff dries sort of yellowish, and as a matter of fact, if you go back and look at one of my videos on my black pearl, this is the same stuff I used to make the sails. This and bathroom tissue. So that's what I use to do that. So all you do, honestly, and this is really, really simple. So I got a whole bunch of these brushes, these really, really cheap brushes. Like they're like 20 in a pack that I got for $4. But you essentially just dip this in and then paint this PVA glue onto the area you want to go. And then what I used is this stuff. This is basing snow. So if you want to get the really expensive stuff, you can go to like Army Painter and Battlefield. This is actually, it's wrong lid. This is the snow. It's this lid belongs on this thing, but I actually used both of these. So this one here is snow. This one here is ash gray basing material. And they're really, both of the reason I use these are both really, really fine. They're about as fine as I can get, or as fine as I have. And they're these, the only reason I have these are for the miniatures that I do. I do, 28mm wargaming, and this was the stuff I used to do the basis for those. And I've done terrain and things like that. And this is how I do the terrain. And what I did is I actually had picked up from, I think it was Army Painter, this basing kit, right? And it had whole bunches of these things in here. So this is like forest scatter and lichen and different trees and rocks and things. All of this stuff would have no use there, but the snow is perfect. This snow, and I thought about using some of this light flock that I had, but because some of it's a little bit finer, but it wouldn't look right. I tried it on a test piece to see when I painted it gray, and really the best option I had, or the best choice I had, was to use this and this ash gray stuff. Let me pop this open real quick. So this is what that is. And you can see in here there's other stuff, because basically what you do is you reuse it. So what you do is you just take this, and while the glue is wet, you just sprinkle this onto the surface, and that's all you do. You give the glue a little bit of time to set, and all you do is you take your base and tap it, and then the loose stuff falls off, and then you sweep up what's left, so you don't just throw it away, and you put it into another, you sort of catch it all, and you go back and reuse it. So Typically what you do when you're doing bases like this, you use one type of material at a time, then you shake it off, then you could catch it, and you could put it back in whatever material container you were using. But because I wanted to mix this ash gray and the snow in at the same time, so I have both of these here because basically when I knocked it off, I was knocking them off at the same time. But you can see here, this is what the two of them, those two pieces look like before they get painted. Now what I'd done, I sort of told you that story to tell you this one. When I went and did that, after I went back and then hit this with primer, I found that there were spots that I'd missed. Now I intentionally missed the places where the buildings are going to go. I will have to go back and I will have to base around the edges of the buildings to close up any gaps that will be there. And that will be a somewhat laborious process, but it will be necessary to finish off the look for this. But like here, you can see here, here's a spot. Matter of fact, you know what? That's a spot that I missed. And that's a spot that I missed. So I can actually go back right now and show you exactly how I did this. But that's what I ended up doing. So you're going to see these spaces like this right here is a different color. That's because I realized that I had missed that. So all I do, again, I'm sort of winging this off the cuff because I just now realized that this was something I missed. But all I did here is I just go in with a little bit of this glue and I just dab with the PVA glue, right? And I just put sort of a layer of PVA glue on. Now I'm making sure not to leave a heavy edge, right? So I don't have it, so you kind of can't see the seam. Because if you put this down, right? If you put this down real heavy, you see how that gives you an edge. You want to make a point to sort of smear it in and let it just do, it helps to actually do this in view. So what you do is you actually just kind of take the glue and literally paint it on, right? And that's all you do. So now while that's on, what I will do is I'll take that brush, and when we're done, I will wash it. Just run it through water, and then I can keep using. I used that brush for all of this. So now I would normally just take the snow, but since I have this stuff that I'd already used before, I'm just going to use this leftover and grab a pinch of it, and I'm just going to sprinkle it where that glue is, right? And then I'm laying it down kind of heavy because I want it to fill in that whole space. But that's really all you do here, or all I've done. And if I want to tamp it down, I can, but you don't need to. And then we just let it dry for a bit. And for a bit, I'm talking like moments, because what I'm going to do right about now, once that's done, tap that off, and you see it now has the same texture as the rest of it. And then all you do is you take a little scraper or whatever and scrape your leftover basing material that you've knocked off. You scrape it off the table into your in your container. See, that's how that works. If you're working on other things, you could also, like, you could lay down paper and you could tap that all into paper, and then you could take the paper and lift it off, but whatever works, right? So that's the basing surface. Then what I'd done is I spray painted the whole thing black, to sort of, because you can tell these are different colors. So where I'd used the tile ground, it was very white, and it was going to show through any of the light gray. So I hit this all with black, and then came back over with this light gray to sort of give it a, lighten it up a bit, because I don't want gray. And then I went back and I painted the Alpha buildings an off-white, right? And then we're going to go back and we're going to shade these here in a bit. But that's, we're going to shade and highlight these things, but this is also going to get a wash. So this is going to get darkened a good bit. If you actually look at the pictures of Moonbase Alpha, this is actually very dark as compared to the buildings. Matter of fact, there's a picture of a model of Moonbase Alpha actually used in one of the episodes, and I believe it was episode Black Sun. But I'll give you a picture here. Right, so that was Victor Bergman showing his cool anti-Black Sun shield, and but he had a model of the moon base, and that kind of gives you the color look, the color difference we're going for. So all of that, right, all that waffle is how I got this part done. The next step now, I will go back once the glue dries here. I will hit this again with another shot of gray primer to sort of balance out these new pieces that I had missed and had to go back and do. And then I will start working on the buildings. So a couple things about the buildings. This is one of the old bases, right? So these are the updated accurate ones, and remember the kit comes with 3 of the old ones, right, in this piece. And I took one because I wanted to try something. I was curious to see if it would be worth it to fiber optic the lights around the edge. To see if it would be worth it to, because around the landing bay, around the landing pads, they have the little lights, and it doesn't work, right? They're just much too big. And this is 1/2 mil. Yeah, this is 1/2 mil fiber optic. It's the smallest I have, and it's not worth it. So, but I did that with one of the old ones just to test out to see. But while I was doing that, I also played around with shading. So what I'd done is I base coated this with the same color. Then I hit it with a light dark wash. I lightly hit it with a dark wash. Then I've gone back and I have dry brushed back up using essentially bone white, but white. Not the off-white that this is, but a white. So we have different layers of the white. This is like an ivory bone white. This is dry brushed with white. I hit it with a very light gray and then white. So there's like multiple layers of the colors there going. But that, I think, is giving me the shading that I'm looking for. It's subtle enough so that it's not super shaded, super heavy like, gaming miniatures, but it does bring out the corners and the edges, right? So you can see that there it kind of highlights the point of the edges. Now this didn't come out quite as nicely as I'd like to. So I'm going to try again with another one of these, and I'm going to try doing it with oils. And I want to see if oils are really any better than just the wash and dry brush. I'm not sure which, but so the next step now will be to do that. So it's going to be difficult to shade those pieces once I get them on here, because getting into all of those nooks and crannies and then everything, and then I have to go back and put the basing around the edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shade the pieces of the base before I glue them on, and I will do them in the order that I would be putting them on. So I'll take these pieces, I will shade these, and then I'll put them down. Then I'll go in and I'll do the basing edges for them. And then I'll do the next step where we get the rest of the pieces. So there's basically 2 steps where you put the jigsaw puzzle together, and actually 3, because then you put all the other pieces on. So I'm going to do that and shade these as they go down. Once I've got all that down, and once I've put the edging around, then I'll go back and then I will start doing the washes and the shading and the dry brushing of the base after the buildings are on. So there, I've waffled on for quite a bit now. Sort of giving you how I got to where I am, where I'm going to go next. on doing this. Those of you sharp-eyed folks will notice I have said absolutely nothing about main mission. And yes, I am going to sit on the main mission part of this build for a bit. I want to figure out how I want to do that. I do want to do that as a diorama, which means I'm probably going to be doing lighting and other sort of things, but that will not be part of this project. This project will just be the Moonbase. So with that said, I hope for those of you who are looking at doing this, this is my my attack at how to do, or how I'm planning to do the basing and all that for this. And I'm learning as I go, right? Again, this is something that I failed to do 4 decades ago, but it already looks much better than my first attempt. So I'm calling it a win where we're at, and we will see where we end up going. I may even go back and add mountains to the edges here, depending on how things play out. So anyway, with that said, that is the next phase of the Moonbase Alpha project. I hope this is entertaining, useful, or at least informative for those folks who are looking at doing something like this, or also doing like basing for dioramas and so forth. So I will go ahead and close down, say thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy modeling.